I think the Brexit vote went against most people's expectations, and the result of it, leaving the European Union, made Britain significantly more reliant economically on the United States, losing access to the common market, losing access to the various economic benefits of being part of the European Union, meant a greater reliance on that, the so-called special relationship between Britain and the United States, and a level of desperation to get some kind of free trade deal with the US, which we've been trying to negotiate for the last 7-8 years, and we're still nowhere near it, but that's another story. So the golden era ended and relations got significantly worse. And they've been at that kind of nadir for quite a few years. Up into and including a couple of years ago when these poor guys were arrested. And we've never actually heard the details about why they are arrested. All the newspaper headlines were just, these guys are accused of being spies for China and passing information to the Chinese embassy or the Chinese authorities. The Chinese have certainly denied it. And as far as anyone can tell, there's no evidence in relation to it. But this was at a time of all-round anti-China hysteria. The Biden administration was shooting down weather balloons over Montana. You remember the whole spy balloon saga. It's exactly that same period of time. Yeah. So there's a kind of generalized hysteria that the Chinese are out to get us. They're trying to attack our democracy. They're trying to steal our secrets, et cetera, et cetera. I think the situation has changed a little bit for the better. The current government in Britain, which has been in power since July last year, its main policy is, we're going to drive economic growth. We want GDP growth. That's the one thing that we promise to people. Actually, they're not doing very well at delivering that, and it doesn't appear to be on the horizon anytime soon. But everybody knows that if you want economic growth, you're not going to get it without deep trade and investment relationship with China, and you're not going to get that if you're constantly feeding into this anti-China hostility and an aggressive campaign, and a propaganda war against China. So I think the discourse has shifted a little bit, has become, we've become a little bit less xenophobic in our media and among our government politicians. And I think that's the fact that these people have been released and the charges have dropped maybe reflects that to some degree. But Martin's probably got a bit deeper insight than I do.
No, I agree with, I think, everything you've said. I'd take it back a bit further because of my great age, and say that in my experience, there was a progressive warming of attitudes towards China from the early part of this century. And I think, so things that have coloured it up until then, for example, Tiananmen Square and all that, that began to recede in the memory and so on. And people began to be curious about a country growing so quickly and taking so many people out of poverty and so on. And they were thinking, well, maybe this is an opportunity for us. So it was a not particularly politically sophisticated reaction at all, but it was a sort of open-mindedness which had previously not been there towards China. And as Carlos said, the door was shut I think, exactly by the circumstances you described. The only other thing I think I would add is that what the Cameron-Osborne government did was exactly as you said. And since the Second World War, Britain has only crossed America twice. Once was Harold Wilson refusing to send British troops to Vietnam at the request of the Americans, but it was never publicised at the time, so it's not really known about. And the second was this. It was an extraordinary thing that they did. Great credit to them. But, they were brought down by basically anti-Europeanism in the Conservative Party, and they've gone. And where credit is due, this wing of the Tory party was very enlightened about how to handle China. And because these debates are not just happening in Britain, they're in some way or other replicated in a number of the European countries. I think on the question of this trial, I know someone who knew one of the guys, and they say that they don't believe the evidence.
Yeah.
But as you said, the evidence has not been published. So I think it is a product of its time. The security, it's very easy in a country like Britain, or any country probably, for the security services to create a spin.
Yes.
I mean, I think the involvement of security services in the anti-China shift in the West over this period should be given proper attention. Australia was a classic example where I think the security service probably led it. And now, as I understand the situation on the Chinese, this trouble, the Chinese embassy and so on, is that basically they don't trust China, but whereas like Defence Ministry and the intelligence services, whereas the rest of the government is much more phlegmatic about it. So these questions, this is how it's been fought out, I think. I hope that obviously there's people in the government who are really trying to push things in the direction of a closer relationship with China. All credit to them, and I hope that they succeed. But there are powerful anti-China forces. Absolutely. And so we just can't be sure, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I was reading, like I was following the case, right? Because anything